Yeah. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the, don't change the screen on me. To the Charlotte Zoning Committee Work Session, October 4th, 2022. Welcome, everyone, and we are not, this meeting is being streamed on YouTube. Is that correct still? All right, good. Just checking my notes. This is not a continuation of the public hearing. If we need to ask and recognize any member of the public, we can, but let's keep our questions concise. And
After the meeting.
next screen, I think we're ready to move on. Agenda? Oh,
Yeah.
we don't have an agenda screen? I think I recall.
This is the part where you do the intro.
Just doing the intros, yeah. All right. I'm Philip Gusman. I'm chair of the zoning committee. Let's hear from the rest of my fellow committee members. Perhaps my vice chair first. Remember to specify.
Hi, everybody. My name is Douglas Walton. I'm the vice chair of the zoning committee for now.
Good evening, Erin Barbie, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
Good evening, Will Russell, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
Would you like me to say it again? Good evening again. Erin Barbie, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
Good evening, Will Russell, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
RJ Harvey, Planning Commission.
Melissa Gaston, Planning Commission.
8 o'clock, people.
Good evening, Courtney Rhodes, Planning Commission, Zoning Committee.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Well, I think we're ready to jump in then. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, you're absolutely correct.
It's really our first rodeo.
We do this. Yes, staff. I don't know. Dave's not here, so I was going to point to him, but John, perhaps.
John Kinley, planning staff.
Michael Russell, planning staff.
Anna Aliati, planning staff.
Holly Kramer, Planning Staff.
Joe Mangum, planning staff.
Emma Kay, Planning Staff.
Thank you. And we will be having Dave Petit here in a moment. Now, online, what staff do we have there?
Jake Carpenter, CDOT.
Patrick Monroe, CDOT staff.
Yo, CDOT staff.
Kevin Parker, CDOT staff.
Does that look like it's it? Very good then. No, should we go ahead without Dave?
I do have the deferrals.
You've got this one? Oh, the deferral list. Good.
So deferrals, we have item 1 for 2021-209, item 2, 2021-213, item 3, 2021-244, item 4, 2021-274, and then we just recently added item 16, 2022-035.
I would require a motion to defer those guys.
This is Commissioner Barbie. I make a motion.
Commissioner Welton, I'll second that motion.
Moved by Barbie, seconded by Welton. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Those are deferred. Unanimous. Right. Jumping into, I guess, number 5 then, rezoning petition 2019-073 by Ravin Partners. And Holly.
Thank you. 2019-073 is just a little under 2 acres along the north side of West Tremont Avenue, west of South Tryon Street, and east of Toomey Avenue. Go ahead to the next one. The existing zoning is I-1 light industrial, and they are proposing to get a TOD NC Transit Oriented Development Neighborhood Center. This is one of the areas that's transitioning away from industrial uses that wouldn't really be compatible with the trending development that we're seeing in that area. The 2040 policy map does recommend neighborhood 2 for this site. It is a commissional petition, so there's no associated site plan. It's within a 1-mile walk of the east-west station. So it meets the TOD applicability standards. This would revise the place type from neighborhood 2 to neighborhood center, just because neighborhood center is more applicable with the TOD NC uses that could be possible there. That's it. I'll take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly. Any questions, comments from the committee?
This is Commissioner Barbie. I'll make a motion. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2019-073 as it appears before us and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Welcome.
This is
Welcome back. Thank you.
Commissioner Welton, and I will second that motion.
Okay, excellent. Properly moved by Barbie, seconded by Welton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimous. Nice to have you back, Aaron. All right, moving on to number 6, rezoning petition 2021-267 by YMCA of Greater Charlotte. That's Claire or Dave, I'm assuming.
Yep, thank you. All right, this petition 2021-267, it's just under 12 and a half acres. It's on West Boulevard and Donald Ross Road. It's currently zoned institutional conditional on R22 MF. Proposed zoning is MUD optional. And the adopted place type from the policy map does recommend neighborhood center for the surrounding area. The proposal as presented at the hearing was for 2 development areas, area A and B, have up to 53,000 square feet. Civic and indoor recreational uses, 7,000 square feet of medical, clinic, and office uses, and then up to 5,000 square feet of retail uses or financial institution. And then development area C would allow a library up to 22,000 square feet. Mobile food vending and fresh produce stands would be permitted uses. Principal buildings would be limited to 5 with a max height of 65 feet in coordination with CATS 4. A new concrete pad or bus shelter where the existing bus stop is on West Boulevard would be coordinated during permitting. Design guidelines related to building materials, facade placement, parking lot placement, massing and height would also be included in the petition. It does allow a financial institution with accessory drive-through within Area B, but it cannot be located between the building and West Boulevard. So that's the one optional provision. And then the other would be to allow the existing sidewalk and planting strip in envelope A, which is primarily the frontage where the YMCA is, for that to remain in place. They do have some transportation improvements that were included, mainly 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk along their frontages, except in that location as mentioned where the YMCA is. The sidewalk and planting strip would also be included along the frontage area where they have frontage on Donald Ross Road. And then also would extend an eastbound left turn lane on West Boulevard and then provide improvements to the intersection of West Boulevard and Clanton Road and Donald Ross Road. Those would be things related to bicycle detection, accessible pedestrian signalization, a leading pedestrian interval, and flashing yellow arrows. There were some changes since the hearing, mainly modification of some of the language pertaining to the flashing yellow arrows on all approaches. Did add language stating that in addition, upgrade pedestrian ramps in each quadrant of the intersection would meet ADA ProWAG compliance. Language pertaining to the leading pedestrian interval, would include an LED right turn, blank out and 4-section flashing arrow for the northbound right turn lane on Clanton. Those improvements would be completed prior to the issuance of the first CO within building envelope B. And then also that'd be subject to the petitioner ability to request that CDOT allow a letter of credit to be posted for any of the improvements not in place at the time the first CO was issued. And then the final addition was language noting the petitioner will add a buffered bike lane along West Boulevard where the existing curb and gutter is required to be relocated. That would be to accommodate roadway improvements required by CDOT or NCDOT. Installation of the buffered bike lane would be, of course, subject to approval by NCDOT. So those were the changes. Nothing significantly material to the project outcome, just clarifications on some of the transportation improvements All issues have been resolved. Staff does recommend approval. It is consistent with the neighborhood center place type recommendation, and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
I would say there was a lot of significance there that did change, but it was, I agree that it probably doesn't impact the, the rezoning of this.
Yes.
Wow, this is a good one, guys. Any questions, comments? Douglas?
Dave, just one question.
Yep.
The drive-through in area B or development area B, it says cannot be located between the building and West Boulevard. Can it be located on either side? I'm just thinking that, you know, there are certain times when we have drive-throughs and the traffic is not contained within the area. So we wouldn't want to have a drive-through on either side, would we? Or is that even a consideration?
It would be mainly the lanes would, the drive-through component of the use itself couldn't be in front of the building. So you know,
Okay.
they could come in and, you know, queue around the side of it, but everything would have to be behind the building. So the
Okay.
drive-through lane itself where any stacking would occur wouldn't be between the building and the street.
Okay, I had a chicken related kind of
Yeah.
things there.
This is not a Chick-fil-A. It's in the next.
Unbelievable. Another quick question. Who's on this one? Because I want to direct it to the person, staff member that is reading.
Claire.
Claire. So this is being proposed zoning of mud. Oh, what does that translate to in the new UDO?
It wouldn't translate because it's a conditional district, so it would just stay Muddo.
We won the 10,000 reason.
If I'd like to hear more. Okay, go right ahead. Sorry. Mike.
On Donald Ross, I know it mentioned something about flashing, but I don't see if that's, well, in that curve, if anybody is familiar with it, it's quite a dead end space. I mean, there's trees and all that stuff kind of overgrown, and you kind of come up to the Y entrance, you know, and there's no announcement. Is that where the note was changed, where the flashing indicators, or is that just the pedestrian piece?
Let me check. Is somebody on CDOT could maybe speak to that question and provide some insight on what some of those changes to, particularly to some of the pedestrian intervals and where those are and how that relates to the question by Commissioner Harvey, please.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Kevin Parker with CDOT here. If I'm understanding the question correctly, I believe the question is in regards to the flashing yellow arrows on at the intersection of Donald Ross and West Boulevard. And so essentially, what that is just the typical flashing yellow left turn arrows to allow permissible left turns off of the typical green arrow. Also included in those improvements at West Boulevard and Donald Ross is it's called LPI, which is leading pedestrian intervals, which gives pedestrians a little more time to get through the crosswalks at these intersections. And then there's also bike detection that will be implemented at this intersection as well. So a lot of signal modification improvements.
It's actually not at the intersection. It's actually before you get to the intersection. If you're coming from Wilkinson Boulevard on Donald Ross headed up to West Boulevard, I see that there's like a gray arrow here. Is that where we're putting indicators? Yeah, right where the red arrow is there. Is anything going there?
No, that is just a proposed access point.
Okay. Yeah, no, I asked that question because coming from either direction, you don't see the entrance unless you know that it's there. So I think that some attention should be paid to that.
That's the entrance for the Y on Donald Ross, is that?
Yes.
That's the question, yeah.
Okay.
And
Yes.
Ross is not going to be separated there or anything, right? It's just an entrance. There's no right in, right out or anything like that.
No, and go ahead, Kim.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
No, that will be proposed full movement access.
All right. Any other questions?
I have it in my heart to do it again.
I know you do.
I'll make a motion. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2021-267 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Commissioner Rhodes, I second.
Moved by Barbie, seconded by Rhodes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. That passes unanimous. Any against? Pardon me, I should, nope. That passes unanimous. Excellent. Moving on to number 7, rezoning petition 2021-281 by Blue Freight Transport. Go.
Yes, it's approximately 3.8 acres located on the north side of Fred D. Alexander, just to the south and west of Brookshire Boulevard. Current zoning is split zone R4 and I2 and within the Lower Lake Wiley protected area. Proposed zoning is I2 CD, Lower Lake Wiley protected area. The 2040 policy map recommends neighborhood 1. The proposal is for up to 45,000 square feet of gross floor area of uses allowed in the I2 district. That is with the prohibition of the following uses: assembly of industrial machinery and equipment, lumber and wood products, paper and allied products, plastic and rubber products, metal products, automotive service stations, recycling centers, eating, drinking, and entertainment establishments, type 1 and 2, with accessory drive-through window, retail establishments, theaters, truck stops, truck terminals, utility operations centers, abattoirs, agricultural industries, construction and demolition landfills, crematory facilities, foundries, jails and prisons, junkyards, lumber mills, manufacturing, boat and ship building, fabricated metal products, grain mills, meat products, medical waste disposal, petroleum storage facilities of more than 200,000 gallons, quarries, sanitary landfills of more than 200,000 gallons. Oh, sorry, I'm going backward. I'm losing. It's a lot of prohibited uses. Let's see, where are solid waste transfer stations, tire recapping and treading, and waste incinerators. We'll be providing a 64-foot Class A buffer, which they're showing as proposed to be reduced to 48 feet as allowed by the ordinance, which would include a berm. That's in the gray or in the green area on the screen. Would establish a 30-foot building and parking setback along Fred D. Alexander Boulevard. Limit new lighting to full cutoff type and must be downwardly directed. It's green. Is that on? Okay. Also commits to screening of dumpster and recycling areas by a solid wall or berm. Since the public hearing, petitioner has provided illustration to verify U-turn movements and modifications to the U-turn bulb. And while it's inconsistent with neighborhood 1 place type, petition is compatible with the I2 zone parcels and uses to the east and the south. Parcels currently split zones, so this would put the parcel under one zoning district and allow it to be developed. It's also along major thoroughfare, many industrial properties in the vicinity, and staff does recommend approval. Be happy to take any questions.
Committee, any questions on this one? I have one comment. A lot of times, so the 60-foot berm, pardon me, the 60-foot no, it's not a setback though. The green area, buffer, can be reduced if they put the berm in, correct? Just making sure.
That's correct. That's an ordinance allowance for 25% reduction.
So this is an example, as we've seen over the years, and as we've seen even last month and everything, of times when we do put residential next to industrial, there's a lot that usually goes into it. Just a moment for us all to take note that I think this is the right way if we're going to be limit the uses to things that are going to be acceptable to residential. My soapbox.
Yeah, but then, I don't think that this is saying that just because we put a berm in, we
No.
can put residential
No.
next to.
I would say
industrial.
staff has done a good job putting this together, or getting it to this point. So, any other questions, comments? Motions?
Over here.
All right. I motion to approve, having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2021-281 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
It's Commissioner Rose, I second.
Moved by Russell, seconded by Rhodes. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimous. Moving on to number 8, rezoning petition 2022-006 by DHIC LLC. Michael.
Thanks. This is approximately 18.8 acres located on the south side of Interstate 485 and the west side of Interstate 77 and east of the North Lake Center Parkway. Currently, it is zoned R3, single family residential, and BP, business park. The proposed zoning is UR2, conditional, urban residential. The 2040 policy map recommends the regional activity center place type for this site, and the petition is consistent with that place type. So the proposal, they propose to develop a multifamily residential community of up to 312 multifamily dwelling units on the vacant land. It allows for a maximum of up to 12 principal buildings. They do limit the heights to 65 feet. They commit to an amenity area with a clubhouse, fitness center, and a pool. They are providing an 8-foot wide sidewalk and 8-foot wide planting strip on the internal public and private network streets. And they are providing street network connections to future streets. And they do provide architectural details in their proposal. So there are no outstanding issues, and staff does recommend approval of this petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions, comments from committee? Motions?
It's Commissioner Walls, and I'll make a motion.
Right ahead.
Having reviewed the petition and the consistency statement as prepared by staff, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-006 as it appears before us, and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
This is Commissioner Barbie. I'll second.
Moved by Walton, seconded by Barbie. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's another against. That's another unanimous. We are down one commissioner at this moment, just for the record. We are out Courtney Rhodes. So we are 6-0. And moving on to number 9, rezoning petition 2022-014 by Stewart. John,
Thank you.
let's build a firehouse.
This is approximately 1.08 acres on the northeast intersection of West 28th Street and Bancroft Street, east of North Graham Street. There's an existing fire station at the site. Next slide. Current zoning is R5 single family residential, and the proposed zoning is neighborhood services, NS. The 2040 policy map recommends neighborhood 1 place type for the site. It would allow the fire station with a maximum height of 40 feet and access from 28th Street and Bancroft, constructs an 8-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip on both street frontages. illustrates the existing portion of the existing building to remain in new building and renovation parking area, and provides a 10-foot side yard adjacent to single-family use and zoning. There haven't been any changes since the public hearing to the site plan. All the outstanding issues have been addressed. The staff recommends approval of the petition. It is consistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for neighborhood 1 place type. And that's basically because the use is allowed in neighborhood 1. It's just a minor issue of basically a buffer that they need the NS zoning. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Don't see any. I did have one question. I see we're preserving, or they're maintaining a structure that's on the property. Is that for preservation purposes, or they want to use it? I'm just curious from that.
My understanding is the portion of the existing building that's remaining is where they store some of the historical vehicles and equipment. And so that portion is newer than the rest of the building. So that's the portion they're going to keep. I think they're going to do some renovations to it, but they're planning on keeping that part of the structure. And then the rest of it is much older and needs to be updated to meet their standards.
Happy to see some reuse in it anyway. All right. Anyone?
Commissioner Barbie, I'll make a motion.
Go right ahead.
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-014 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Commissioner Russell, second.
Properly moved by Barbie, seconded by Russell. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Still out, Courtney, 6-0, pardon me. Moving on to number 10, rezoning petition 2022. Thank you.
Bye, people. Come back. Didn't you want to stay for the whole thing?
Rezoning petition 2022-020 by Decenti Partners LLC. Holly.
Yeah, give us just a moment. We'll bring up the PowerPoint. We just had to switch out.
Kevin.
Smile, Kevin, you're on camera.
It wasn't like you started this meeting off.
Sorry, got two. Right. Petition 2022-020 is 0.71 acres. It's located on the west side of DeWitt, Freeland Lane along the north side, and the east side of Ellenwood Place. This picture actually shows it a little bit. There's a very tiny icon where you can see, and that's the Scaly Bark Station just east of the site. It's about a 0.21 walk to the site, the Scaly Bark Station. The current zoning is R5 single family residential, and the proposed zoning is UR3 CD, urban residential conditional. The policy map for this does recommend neighborhood 1. That is also obviously reflective of the current zoning, but it also picks up a lot of the small area plans recommendations. The old one that's now retired called for this to be single family. All right, you can go to the next slide. So this was the site plan as proposed at the public hearing. There have been a couple of substantial changes that I'll go over in a moment. But the short of it is it was proposing 16 units now to be 15 at no more than, well, it was 6 units per building. That has now been modified. It proposes some pedestrian improvements. Actually, can we just go to the next slide? This is probably easier to show what it's proposing now. Okay, so the changes since public hearing, this site plan now identifies 4 buildings on the site. So if you look along Ellenwood Place, which is just to the west of the site, building 1, which would be directly abutting the single family residential portion, building 1 will be capped at 36 feet, as will building 2. And building 1 will be either a duplex or a triplex, and building 2 would be a triplex. Building 3, I just got confirmation, and I think you all heard from the petitioner as well. They're looking at no more than 4 units in Building 3, and Building 4, no more than 6. They have also added a Class C 10-foot landscape buffer above Building 1, abutting the single-family residential. Some architectural details like a sloped roof for Buildings 1 and 2 that help blend it into the single-family residential architectural styles that we'd like to see there. So the building form has changed, the unit count has changed. There is no longer a potential driveway access off Ellenwood. That was also a request of the community. Front porches and balconies will definitely be incorporated into at least buildings 1 and 2. And those are the primary changes, and 16 units down to 15. And that addresses a lot of the staff concerns that we had with this petition moving into a public hearing. We wanted to see changes to it that would basically moderate between the TOD areas and the dense corridors that we're wanting along South Boulevard, but acknowledging that single family is going to be staying there in that area and trying to be respectful of that and conforming this development into the single family, adding a transition away from the TOD. I didn't note it. Actually, could we go back to the place type slide? Just want to point out that this is adjacent to Regional Activity Center. That's because that's zone TOD UC, and then there's some TOD CC just to the south of it. So that's picking up the Community Activity Center and the Neighborhood 1. So if this proposal were approved, it would change the place type to Neighborhood 2. I think that establishes a more appropriate transition between TOD and the Neighborhood 1. Having something like low density residential against TOD UC certainly isn't ideal. So staff is happy to see the changes that have happened since the public hearing. And we now support this petition. I think there are a couple other things I wanted to call out. Oh yeah, so you all heard from the petitioner that they're also considering larger setbacks along Ellenwood for buildings 1 and 2. That's in response to the outstanding issue that we have on the most recent staff analysis, asking for setbacks that would transition into the single family a little bit better, just as they are able to. The setbacks in R5 is 20 feet. So the current setback establishes 18 feet, but trying to get that pushed back just a little bit more, guiding a transition as much as possible up Ellenwood. So the petitioner has committed to looking at the setbacks and adjusting those. The other item, I think that was the main request. And then establishing, like I said, unit maximums in buildings 3 and 4. So maximum of 4 units in building 3, maximum of 6 units in building 4. That's a lot of words, but if you all had a chance to review it and you have any questions, please let me know. Be happy to address anything.
Excellent.
Question. Couple actually.
We have a couple this way and then we'll go
Yes,
that
I
way.
do. This is the one, so buckle in, Doug. So can you help me understand why there was a big push for a unit maximum? Considering that we're a growing city and we need all the units possible, pushing against the number of units seems counterintuitive. So can you explain your rationale for wanting to reduce the unit count?
So it wasn't that we requested a unit count reduction, as we were requesting more changes in the building form, which is obviously going to kind of translate to a unit count reduction. That's trying to establish a transition. As it was written with in this iteration of the site plan, there was no basis for staff support because we didn't have a policy that would really be able to get us to a point of support. But modifying the building form, and that happened to come with a slight unit count reduction, helps us get to a basis to where buildings 1 and 2 are consistent with the neighborhood 1 place type. And buildings 3 and 4, well, building 3, it's a quadplex, so there's an argument to be made that's consistent with N1. Building 4, that's really N2. But that gives us a basis of support. Like there is some neighborhood 1 component here. So in terms of why we wanted the unit count reduction, we just wanted to see this try to conform as much as possible to establish a transition between the single family and the TOD.
Okay, would you mind scrolling back to the place type map? So I understand your concern about making the transition, but if you look at the map in a holistic sense, you've got a regional activity center to the right. And then to the left, you've got a community activity center with the neighborhood one wedged in between. So like, I understand if you were transitioning from regional activity to neighborhood one and it was more extensive, but you're essentially protecting a neighborhood one pocket between two activity centers. So is that an appropriate analysis to push back on?
Is it appropriate to protect the neighborhood one?
Yes, when it's between two activity centers based on your own place type mapping.
So it's a tough site, but you do have to be considerate of even the goals that we have of the comprehensive plan when we talk about displacement and we talk about growing smartly and growing with care to the established single family. I think we wanted to we wanted this site plan to grow in a way that could protect the interests of the neighborhood in the long run. And so changing the building form, yes, it reduces the unit count, but we think having them look more like single family homes and building in those architectural elements, that's going to help the single family, the neighborhood one, those residences being able to stay there in the long run. It goes back to our goals, I think, of the comprehensive plan. But I don't know if Dave has any additional details.
No, I think you said it pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then pushing on that a little bit further, I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that analysis, because you're saying on one hand, you want to apply to the comprehensive plan, which is to increase housing, but then we're pushing back on it by reducing units.
I think we need to be a little cautious on how we increase housing, though. I think that's the whole goal of the plan, is there's got to be a balance between neighborhood preservation, neighborhood character preservation, and growing infill in a way that's contextually sensitive to that. And I think that's where we get the balance out of this petition of getting some infill, getting some moderate increase in some units, but doing it in a way that blends a little bit better with the neighborhood, which is really one of the goals of the plan, is to, be sensitive to those contexts. And I think this petition actually did a really good job of doing that, from where we started to where we are now. I think is really a good blend of trying to get some units, but also trying to be cognizant of an existing single family neighborhood that was targeted for preservation in our previous area plan, and had some specific language about how this neighborhood would potentially redevelop. And so that just carries forward through the comp plan. But I think there's some pretty specific language on preservation of some of these neighborhood pockets and doing that in a way, as Holly mentioned, that's a little bit more context sensitive. And I think that's what we tried to balance with this petition. I think it ended up doing a fairly decent job of that so far.
Okay. And then my last question is based around what you talked about as far as, so I understand the building form. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with protecting character. I think that's a good thing. But I think where we run into issues are with things like setbacks. So this is just personal opinion. I hate setbacks. I think they're just a waste of good land. So help me understand why the increase in the setback was necessary. I know that it's zoned supposed to have 20 feet. They got 18, if I heard you correctly.
So R5 would be 20. UR3 is actually 14. So
Okay, so they're above the.
they are above that. This is, again, it's just about establishing a transition into single family and trying to build in that character wherever possible. This has been a conversation that they've tried to have with the community since January now. And the community has said over and over again, we want this to look like single family residences. How do you make it look like single family residences? It's with the small things like front porches, no rooftop terraces, pushing back that setback where you can. The house just to the north of it, if you measure it from the back of curb, is about 40 feet back. So it is going to look very different if you have something pushed that far up and then something that far back right next to it. So just building it in wherever you can, even if it's a couple feet here and there, it's going to help the transition be a lot smoother. And that speaks to the direct community concerns that they've voiced.
Yeah, and understanding that, but there are a lot of places in our city, both older and newer, where there aren't any setbacks in that length, but there are plenty of elevation changes. Myers Park is one of them. Selwyn is one of them. Dilworth and Sedgefield both have conditions where you've got different housing styles that coexist with each other. And there are several duplexes and quadplexes that most people don't know are duplexes and quadplexes because they build in with building form. So I just think we need to take that into consideration as opposed to really just pushing so hard on, well, we just got to have a setback. You know, let's think about how do we develop in a more holistic way as opposed to being rigid, mathematically rigid on transitions and depth. And I rest my case.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Yeah, I'd like to say I really like the changes because initially the way it was presented, it was a no for me. So I really like the changes. Definitely like the compromises and I like that they listen to the current residents. So the only one that I did not see that the residents brought up was an issue with like water in their yard, like a runoff. Was that addressed in any of the changes?
So I don't know that it's directly in the site plan, but I think the petitioner did write up a comment response that talked about the water issue. If you need me to forward it to you, I can do that. I think there's, oh yeah, something about drainage. There are notes, of course, that it'll comply with the post-construction stormwater ordinance and that sort of thing, but there wasn't any additional details that I know of. The petitioner is available if you would like to ask that question more directly to them. But I think it was in the comment response that they sent out.
Okay, okay.
Douglas, go right in.
I'd just like to say that I agree with everything Commissioner Russell has said and strongly agree. I think that there is a missed opportunity here if we don't densify as close to this transit stop as we possibly can. I believe that that's an element of what's happening in this area. And when one looks at this area in terms of previous rezonings and projects that are in flight, we see thousands and thousands of apartments that are as close to TOD as this particular parcel is. I am anxious about this setting a precedent as we go forward and how we deal with these types of situations. Because I don't think that this is the last one of these that's going to come up. I just don't want to set the wrong precedent. If we're going to go with densifying, let's densify, and otherwise we're going to be back into deal making, I guess is the phrase people use. So that's my comments.
RJ.
Yes, I did get a copy of the response from the developer to the community. I get, of course, the need for housing, but in this space, I mean, this is a community. I mean, it's anchored by a church that was built in 1917. There's still about 40, almost 50 residential homes that's there. They are very concerned about this type of development because even with the setback there, if we're looking on the Ellenwood Place here in the buffer, that yard to the top of that or to the north of that is completely shadowed. And I can appreciate, of course, that it was a change or a recognition from 40 to 36. But it still can be confusing to a lot of our communities because, of course, if we're talking about one, just getting them to understand a lot of what this UDO is going to be about and say that on one hand, it's supposed to be a neighborhood one, but because of its unlucky location, if you will, then it's going to be completely moved or wiped out. And so I do agree that, yes, some consideration has to be made for adding additional housing units, but there's something to be said, of course, about keeping a neighborhood, I guess together is the word I'm looking for. So, yeah.
Commissioner Barbie.
So I do hope that this sets a precedent I mean, I love my fellow commissioner, but I have to disagree that at sometimes just thinking about density and only density doesn't serve the community. And I think this is an excellent example of how staff has come together with the developer, with the community to create something that's different, that maybe is unexpected, but very good in the long run beyond all of us sitting here on this commission, looking back and saying, we made the right decision. And I hope that we do it again. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Rose. I totally agree with Commissioner Barbary. Sometimes it is not about the density and the numbers. It really is a compromise between the community. And I think this was a good strike. Could they have had more units? Absolutely, they could have. But that's not what the residents want. They want to be sure that they continue to keep their neighborhoods. And there's a delicate dance that we need to do right now in Charlotte to make sure that we keep charm versus just piling people in. So I think that this is a really good example. I'm very pleased, like I said, with the changes that were made. There were some very strong compromises in the direction of the community versus really a money-making venture. That's what they're doing. So I applaud the efforts on both ends.
So that reads as good work, staff, from at least some of us. So just making sure.
Not all.
Not all. Anyone interested, any other questions, comments, debate?
I'd like to make this motion.
I think you should.
I'm very excited about it. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-020 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
This is Commissioner Welton with love for my fellow Commissioner Barbie. I second this motion.
All the deals.
Moved by Barbie, seconded by Welton. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 nays, 2, 4, 2 to 5. That passes. And would you guys like to make a minority report?
No, I get it.
Would that be sufficient? Or that both? All right. Thank you. Moving on to number 11, rezoning petition 2022-023 by Kindred Fruit Properties LLC. Joe, take us through this one.
Thank you. This is, I think we're one slide ahead, maybe. Go back one slide. Or I can also read the acreage here.
Yeah, I think, Kevin, did you prepare the ventriloquist dolls?
Yeah, Kevin, do Macarena.
It's time for the puppet show.
Was that some kind of
Get the stretch
Pilates
over
there?
here.
This is not what I bought a Peloton for.
That's okay. So this is approximately 0.22 acres located on the north side of Central Avenue between Clement and Pecan, whatever your preference is. They're near the heart of Plaza Midwood.
Pecan.
The current zoning is B2, and it's within the pedestrian overlay. Proposed zoning is Mud O pedestrian overlay. The 2040 policy map recommends community activity center for this site. The proposal is to maintain the existing building while allowing for renovation and expansion up to a maximum of 10,000 square feet of non-residential uses. Building height will be limited to 40 feet, but allows for the building expansion and or outdoor patio, which may be located on the rooftop. Following uses will be prohibited: adult establishments, self-storage, drive-through windows, excluding walk-up windows, and gas stations. They're requesting the following optional provisions: that the existing building may remain and be renovated, improved, expanded, and replaced to include the upward expansion of the building and or rooftop patio. Also, no parking would be required for the use of the existing building or building expansion or patio area. And the existing parking, which is in the rear of the site, may be removed. In the event that a rooftop patio is installed, the petitioner will provide a screening wall of at least 8 feet in height along the northern boundary of the occupiable patio space. Also would install an 8-foot planting strip and 8-foot sidewalk along the site's Central Avenue frontage. Since the public hearing, the petitioner has addressed outstanding issues by adding a note to reference an active land development plan. Also adding a note stating that the site will comply with the tree ordinance and adding the petition number to the site plan. There remains one, there was one remaining outstanding issue, and that was a CDOT request for dedication of additional right-of-way to accommodate that new 8-foot sidewalk and 8-foot planting strip. Understand that CDOT will be rescinding that comment, as there's also a note on the plan stating that that will be provided in an easement rather than in dedication. It's consistent with 2440 policy map, and staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions, comments?
No question, just comment. So this is actually kind of a perfect place for this rezoning petition, because we just got through talking about retaining neighborhood charm and character, and that's what this does. And the reason why it does that is because it's a small development. And as of those of you who watch this channel regularly, all 2 of you online, you will know that I am a champion of small development. So when we're thinking about just kind of going forward, we need to start casting an eye on these smaller developments. Let's make it easier for smaller developers to develop and to keep our neighborhoods that we are so protective of, because they're the ones that are going to do it. The big guys are not going to do it. They're going to come in and take as much space as they need and put up stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward and we look at some of these proposals from here out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barbie, I just have a comment as well. I completely agree with Commissioner Russell. This area in particular is, I think, being known for buildings being torn down and then built back up again, or they're repurposing in a way that doesn't keep charm. And I'm very excited about this one to see what they do. So excellent.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? My comment will be, this is, to Russell's point, this incremental development in some of our parts of our city, especially some of the older parts, can be very helpful at maintaining some of that independent, unique character and charm. For the sidewalk improvements that we finally have been able to do in front of this building, the whole project seemed worth it almost to me, for the remedied sidewalk disaster that had been there for the previous 25 years. So
it's a beautiful, the grass is growing through it so nicely.
If you want to care to make a motion.
I will motion to approve, having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition. I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-023 as it appears before us, and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Commissioner Rose, a second.
Moved by Russell, seconded by Rhodes. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? No. Excellent. That one passes unanimous. Moving on, number 12, rezoning petition 2022-025 by Elm Lane, THD. John.
This is approximately 1.42 acres located on the west side of Elm Lane, north of Bryant Farms Road and south of Ballantyne Commons Parkway. The site is currently developed with one single-family home, and it is in an area that is primarily developed with townhouses and single-family residential uses. There is a small pocket of commercial uses just to the south of the site. Current zoning is R3 single-family residential, and the proposed zoning is UR2 urban residential conditional. And policy map recommends neighborhood 1 for this site. We'll note that the policy map weighed pretty heavily on existing single-family homes and uses. But when we look at this area as a kind of the greater whole, it's more appropriate for neighborhood 2 place type here due to the surrounding neighborhood 2 uses and place type. Next slide. Proposal would be to allow up to 17 single-family attached dwelling units, maximum building height of 30 feet. Setback of 30 feet from the proposed back of curb to match the townhomes to the north. Access to the site from Elm Lane via an internal drive. Then constructs an 8-foot wide planting strip, 8-foot wide sidewalk along Elm Lane frontage, northbound left turn lane into the site. 3 visitor parking spaces on the site. Architectural standards and a minimum of 6,115 square feet of usable common open space to be amenitized with benches and landscaping and similar amenities. There haven't been any changes to the site plan other than to address the staff's comments from the pre-hearing staff analysis. Staff recommends approval. It is inconsistent with that 2040 policy map recommendation for N1 and we'll revise it to an N2 place type. You take any questions?
Any questions on the committee? I did have one quick question. At what point do we expect we will, I know it doesn't have to, but is there a point in the next year while we're doing this that you guys could start indicating some of the I guess recommended or how the transition would work as we move to UDO? I think it's premature still. I think we're still working towards it. But as some of these are coming through, I know you guys are starting to work with petitioners on, hey, are we going to go new? Are we going to go old? And all that. I'm curious, do we have any thoughts on that?
Go over the dates real quick.
Translate from R3 how it would go from R3 to a UDO district or something else?
As much as anything, I'm thinking, why wouldn't the developer, and I realize at this point, the die's been cast, this is too far in, but at some point, I would think that whoever's building this out would look at it and go, oh, I don't need to go use a conditional rezoning.
Yeah.
I can accommodate all this within what's about to happen. I just need to get in a rezoning that's going to translate.
So I guess the challenge of it would be if they went to the only way they could really get this done conventionally and then translate it to a UDO district that would also allow it would be to do a multifamily district. So it'd have to be a conventional multifamily district, which poses some challenges because it's a tight site. The UR district gives them a little bit more flexibility with design standards and development standards. So it's really a matter of the site constraints in a lot of these instances, why they're still going to look for a potential conditional rezoning. This one would just go to like an N1A, which really would only allow duplexes, maybe some triplexes, and quads would be probably a little bit unlikely on this one. So the challenge with some of these tighter, like infill remnant pieces is maximizing the site under an R district is really not achievable because you have setback requirements, you have buffer requirements, you've got a lot more space that can't be developed out on a site like this. So the UR district is really kind of the direction that a lot of those petitions go in. So I think we'll still continue to see those up until the deadline to file conditionals, which is January 30th of next year. But I think at some point, yeah, we're going to have to start getting used to how those neighborhood 2 districts function and operate, which, I think could be a candidate in something like this, but I think until that time really forces the issue, we'll still see a lot of those conditional districts, particularly the UR districts, because again, those infill sites like this are just tight to work with. I think we've got another one later that may be going to an R district is that one on Arrowwood going to an R district? Yeah, so, but I think that's a little bit bigger of a site, but I think that's going to be the balance of it.
Okay.
We probably won't see that full-on transition to taking those neighborhood 2 districts until we really flip the switch on February 1st.
Just looking for opportunities for us to learn and make sure we're ready in 9-12 months. I'll entertain a motion or any other
Question.
question. Go ahead.
I support this rezoning overall, but I've driven by this cute little home a million times and hoping that the future of this site at some point in time would be more of a park or preserved land, considering how much density is directly around it. At what point in time do we as a commission, or do you as staff or the city maybe, establish and say, this is a rare plot of land. It likely would have the best use as fill in the blank. And my hope would be that we build more parks and we build more open spaces in highly dense areas. Do we have any control over that? Or did they sell their single family home to a developer and there's nothing we can do?
So
Is that how that goes?
Well, I think in this case, that's probably what's happened. But I guess from a land use standpoint, we do send rezonings to the Park and Recreation Department for them to review and comment on. So if they do see an opportunity to try to get some parkland out of a site, they'll ask for that, and we've seen that with larger sites. This site being only a couple acres, it's not really probably large enough for them to be on their radar, I guess. And then I guess further down the road, long term, when we do the community area planning process and work with the neighborhoods and the community members in the smaller areas, we'll take a more parcel by parcel approach to land use and future land use recommendations. And at that point, I would expect that maybe we would identify some sites as maybe potential for park land at some point, and then they would have to work with the county to try to get funding to buy it for parkland. But in this case, we're just working with the developer and the owner, proposing a development. So
I can appreciate that explanation. And when I hear things like in the future on down the road, I consider that those sweet little pieces of land that could be a pocket park will likely be eaten up by developers. So if there is a sense of urgency for Park and Rec to look at these smaller sites and consider what could be, because there's a lot of families that would benefit from this type of land, I would urge them to do so. But again, I'll support this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion, anyone? Or any other comments?
This is Commissioner Walton. I'll make a motion.
Go right ahead.
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022, and the game has ended. Who won? I turned my phone off so my mom wouldn't call me. I will do this one more time for consistency's sake. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-025 as it appears before us, and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us. Melissa, would you like to second?
I'll make that such a
Moved by Welton, seconded by Gaston. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed?
It is Philip's fault. This
It
has
is-
been off the rails.
It is that unanimous.
accept the motion.
Moving along,
All your base are belong. to
number
us.
13,
That's the way we do it.
rezoning petition 2022-028, Christ the King Lutheran Church. Back to Joe.
Thank you. This is just over 3.5 acres on the south side of South Tryon between Orchard Gate Drive and Steelcroft Parkway. It's currently zoned R3 and the proposed zoning is institutional conventional. 2040 policy map recommends community activity center place type for the site. And staff recommends approval. The adjacent church, the petitioner, they had rezoned the larger property containing the church building a few years ago, and I believe this was an oversight to not rezone this other parcel. So while it's conventional, that's what we've been told. It'll be for church uses. Yeah, with that, I'll take any questions. Sorry.
Any questions, comments?
This is Commissioner Barbie. I'll make a motion.
Go right ahead.
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-028 as it appears before us and the adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
Properly moved by Barbie, seconded by Harvey. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. All opposed? We are 6-0 on that one. Gaston is out of the room. Moving on to number 14, rezoning petition 2022-031 by, I remember the mayor had a problem reading this one. Kairoy Residential? John, maybe you can pronounce it right.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
5.69 acres on the east side of Monroe Road, north of Galleria Boulevard, south of Sardis Road North. Site's in an area with a mixture of uses. There's multifamily around it to the east and south. And then further to the east is shopping center, the Galleria Shopping Center. Across the street are commercial uses along Monroe Road. So that's kind of the area that you're looking at there. It's currently zoned light industrial I1, and the proposed zoning is MUD CD, mixed use development conditional. The 2040 policy map recommends community activity center for the site. And the proposal would be for up to 275 dwelling units, maximum building height of 65 feet, vehicular access from a full movement driveway on Monroe Road, and a cross access connection at Galleria Club Lane. It constructs an 8-foot planting strip and a 12-foot multi-use path along Monroe frontage, architectural design standards, and two amenity areas with a minimum size of 2,200 square feet and another at 1,600 square feet. Since the public hearing, they've just addressed staff's comments from the staff analysis. There's no outstanding issues. Staff recommends approval of the petition, and it is consistent, again, as I said, with the 2040 policy map recommendation for the community activity center. And I'll take questions.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee?
I have a question of a technical nature. What is the parking ratio for the development in this zoning category?
Give me just a second and I will look that up. One and a half in mud. 1.5 lot is one per unit.
Did anyone else have a question or comment while they're looking that up? No.
Okay, here we go.
Will, do you want to just maybe make
Yeah,
the point, because I think I know where you're headed?
Yeah, and so the reason why I'm asking you to continue to look that up is that you're looking at what, a 2-acre space, and I venture to say 60% of it is parking. And, I thought the whole point of trying to modernize our ordinance was to cut down on this. So, this one just gives me all, it's a
So in MUD, the minimum parking requirement is 1 space per dwelling unit.
So 275 parking spots. And this is off of Monroe Road, so.
It is on the Silver Line corridor. And I don't know exactly where the station platform would be. It's pretty close to this, I think. We don't have a map that shows the station locations, I don't believe. Yeah, the barbecue restaurant is literally right at the intersection, just down the street.
So understanding that.
Typically, we've said that MUD is compatible or consistent with transit-oriented type development. So there have been places along our transit corridors where we've supported mixed-use development zoning district. Having said that, could they have gone even further up and, maybe put in a structured parking deck? That certainly would be something that, could happen in the future along this corridor, especially once the Silver Line is developed. But at this point, the Silver Line is so far out, I don't believe the demand is there yet from a market rate standpoint. But staff wasn't really necessarily pushing for them to go structured with their parking and doing more housing here. Would we have supported it had that been something that they would propose? Yes, we probably would have supported it had they been proposing that as well.
Just making sure. I will say that was my discomfort with this one as well. The parking does seem tight. I'm presuming some of it's a legacy of where we've come from still that we're seeing that's going to obviously still be working through the system and whatnot. I hope that 18 months from now, we're seeing different types of development perhaps in this area, but we are where we are. Anyone like to make a motion?
Commissioner Barbie, I'll make a motion. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-031 as it appears before us and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
I'd like to second that motion.
Moved by Barbie, seconded by Gaston. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay.
Minority opinion, just
Minority opinion, please.
Too much parking on our future transit corridor. I think we need to be more, I can't think of the right word here, but more wise and thoughtful on looking ahead and not looking at the now.
Staff sufficient with that? Good deal. Moving along. Number 15, rezoning petition 2022-032 by Canvas Residential LLC. And we'll go back to John.
Yep. 4.18 acres located on the north side of West Arrowwood Road, east of Forest Point Boulevard, and west of Nations Ford Road. If you go back one slide to the aerial, to the west there is a hotel across the street, and then single-family residential basically to the east and north of the site. It's currently just a vacant wooded lot. Next slide. Its current zoning is R4, single-family residential. The proposed zoning is R8 MFCD, multifamily residential conditional. The policy map recommends neighborhood 1 for the site. Proposed is up to 33 single-family attached townhomes with a density of about 7.8 units an acre. Access from a right-in, right-out, shared drive connection on to West Arrowwood Road. Constructs an 8-foot planting strip and a 12-foot multi-use path along West Arrowwood. Provides a 28-foot buffer reduced to 21 feet with a fence abutting the single-family uses and zoning. Provides architectural standards and a minimum of 7 visitor or guest parking spaces on the site. Since the public hearing, they've just addressed the staff's outstanding issues and technical revisions. There's been no substantial changes to the plan. Staff recommends approval of the petition. It is inconsistent with the 2040 policy map recommendation for neighborhood 1. Again, this is one of those cases where the policy map, leaned pretty heavily on the existing R3 single family zoning. But we do think that this proposal provides a good transition from the more intense commercial uses and hotel uses to the west and the single family residential to the east and the north. We felt neighborhood 2 was a good place type for this site. I'll take any questions.
Any questions, comments from the committee?
If none, this is Commissioner Welton. I'll make a motion.
Welton, go right ahead.
Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-032 as it appears before us, and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
This is Barbie. I'll second.
Moved by Welton, seconded by Barbie. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Against? Opposed? No. That's unanimous. That passes. All right, 16 is deferred, so we don't have to do that one. So we will move on to sticky fingers. Number 17, rezoning petition 2022-038 by RMR Group LLC. Back to Holly.
Thank you. This site is just under 9 acres bound by the south side ENC Road, north side of Southside Drive, and the west side of Old Pineville Road. The current zoning is I2 and MUD optional, so general industrial and mixed use development district. As you can see here, it's surrounded on the north side, east side, south side by TOD zonings. This is along Old Pineville Road in that transit area. Next slide. The policy map recommends community activity centers. So the proposed zoning district of TOD-CC is consistent with that policy map recommendation. This is a conventional petition, so there is no associated site plan. It's within a half-mile walk of the Scaly Bark station. Staff has no issues with it, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions, comments? Can go straight to the motion then.
This is Commissioner Welton. I'll make a motion. Having reviewed the petition and considered the consistency statement prepared by staff to approve this petition, I move that we recommend approval of petition number 2022-038 as it appears before us, and adoption of the consistency statement as it appears before us.
And I second that motion.
Moved by Welton, seconded by Gaston. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Another unanimous? That is the end of our agenda.
Yay. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. I think we'll accept that. I'll accept that motion. And thank you, staff. And let's all count our blessings that we all get 30 minutes back.
Can we
Thank
bring
you.
back the roll call votes?
Yes.
Wow.